My friends, thanks for joining this quick session. So I would like to challenge your brain and thinking about what will happen if a CFO of your company is telling you that is cutting the budget for security. So I witness day-to-day podcast about management strategy, technical, extremely technical as well, because I love both sides. I don't think you can make an impact in security if you stay detached from the technology as well, because you need to know what you secure too. But it's still a business and it's still based on money. And so we created a dependency in terms of licensing and everything in terms of security stack. And so my question is what you'll do if they cut your budget in terms of CISO, in terms of capabilities, in terms of complexity of monitoring and infrastructure. So I think this one should be one of the main questions that we should prepare in advance within the business because your roadmap as a security need to be aligned with the business direction, the technology roadmap, and so based on the CTO direction as well. And security need to be something smoothly coping with various changes. A lot of conversation about agility, the automation, but let's talk about money. What you do? So my thinking is that in security we don't discuss much exit strategies, and that is a big problem. First of all, historically, most of these solutions, security-wise, closed yourself into a vendor choice, and technically, in sales speaking terms, you got cross-selling. You need something, you try to unify, you don't want to have tons of agent on the box, you buy from the same one, they don't go in the direction that you think or you expect, and later on you need to divorce. And as every divorce come with a big migration to your new place. So we are in a situation where business finish the lift and shift to cloud. Infrastructure as a service is becoming the legacy of cloud, and most of the efforts is moving into FaaS, more function as a service. Serverless it will be potentially way more a choice in terms of cost. Leave on aside the fact that PaaS is working. Finally, we reach a sort of maturity in somehow, and so, but on the economical terms, it's still expensive. It's less expensive than infrastructure as a service, but it's still costing. And it does give you a cost that is 360 degree across all components, storage, network. Don't take me wrong, it's not that the function as a service magically doesn't ask you money. But at the same time, we see a lot of attention back into hybrid deployment. So if really the industry, in terms of CTO and technical, is considering again the hybrid that had a sort of shy attempt back then, a couple of years ago, means that he is trying to unify and decide what get deployed where. It's a great concept. We see Anthos, AWS Outpost, HP GreenLake. You do see a tons of design around it, but how is security coping with that? And how is actually your idea of saving cost? So one of the conversation that I would suggest on this topic is for sure decide your dependency in terms of open source. So everybody say no, no, open source no. But anyway, all your code is having a supply chain attack kind of exposure. We did we saw in the past that even vendors get compromised. So the fact that you pay doesn't change that. So for me, the question is how much can you do open source security having a controls on top of that. So I think there are some pro and cons. Something that is for sure is the fact that most of the project are having open source code. So you could decide to actually review code, and that it will be a cost as well, and will be a control. But it is a granularity of your controls that you don't have right now with closed source. Secondary, you do have to consider all portion of be supported. So there are projects that have private companies that can support you. Red Hat is doing business in this way from since back in the days, and most of the security into that stack of product is actually open source. So I'm challenging your thought in terms what is your exit strategy at the time that you bind yourself to something commercial, and is it reasonable or not? And especially, did you evaluate how the pay-as-you-go model will impact the overall cost of security? And reaching a stage where do you spend 30K to protect a car that costs 15K? I think these one are the business consideration that should be at the center of podcast, CISO board, and every kind of fancy conversation that I hear around. Everybody is talking about multi-cloud. Is do multi-cloud means unify engineering, trying to merge reliability engineering with security. That is my opinion of the way to go. But also because it gives you back a lot in terms of visibility and granularity on what you can do and execute. But no, we don't. We are so focused right now on endpoint, end-to-end, all conversation that I'm anyway discussing each video, a bit with a course, a bit on my own with those free virtual coffee conversation. Try to understand if solution like Wazo, Security Onion, volatility, um, forensics is having tons of tools. In the same way, actually, you do use it in red team too, and in purple team as well. So it's a bit a funny situation where security looks like to question open source, but to use it heavily without asking the same questions. So if you have a risk about your vulnerability management process because it's based on some open source portion. What's later on the matter if you enlarge the conversation to other kind of security products? So I think we grew up with a clear state of mind that a vendor was actually a protection when nowadays we witness that is not anymore the case. The attention that you are having in open source libraries is an example that that push in both direction. On one side, you do have to do it because you do use open source libraries in any case. So it's an effort that you can't avoid. On the other hand, it's a cost as well. And you buy a solution that most of the time is even proprietary. That doesn't make always sense. So I think we should discuss across the industry way more which controls we have also on the security posture to understand how business impact decision that soon will come. Because at the time that there is a crisis, at the time that the cost of pay-as-you-go goes too high, you are always migrating to something. So before you migrated to infrastructure as a service, later they told you to go to PaaS, later you move to FaaS, and tomorrow you come back on-prem. In somehow you almost do with an hybrid. So it's a conversation that should be prepared in advance. I always think that there is a sort of pre-work that should become normal in security. We are always focused on prioritization and we miss the due diligence on having other conversation. I always stress out with my experience in incident response the fact that you should have tabletop exercises, uh, test your processes, and have ready some sort of agreement with legal, because at the time that you are in a data breach, that become the bottleneck. No communication get out till doesn't get legal approval. But you see how taking whatever book on CISO is not talking about it, and that is a big gap. It's a big gap because it gives you the wrong thinking structure. You should have some pre-work in the same way how you prioritize in your health something for obvious reason, but you always come back to the overall picture. And health is a style, so we should apply the same things. It's the same reason why I think there are areas of security that are in somehow a bit detached. For example, automation in compliance is uh, is not always there. Forensics is not always there. We talk a lot about blue, red, and purple team, but we always find in the mix that forensic skills are a bit missed. Automation and that even more. So you'll see how often this pre-workout also economically is missed. You should have a monitor on what is your overall security posture score, also across all environment or all multi-cloud that you are having, and have controls on how a change can impact. You could tell me that we didn't have an exit strategy from main service like IAM. Think about AD, Active Directory. But it's true that right nowadays there are a lot of alternatives on where you can place it and how much it can cost protect it. We need to talk about it, about this one for everything. There are tons and tons and tons of good projects. If you look at strong engineering companies are actually heavily using that kind of stack. And sometimes we find the conversation that are a bit funny on supply chain and everything. It's not about if you have or you don't have a supply chain. You'll always have a supply chain risk. And so it's how you manage. Because if the second question is, do you have a supply chain framework? And the answer is no. there is no conversation. It's actually just a statement that you are trying to consider which kind of risk you are having that somebody blame you in terms of due diligence, not justifying why you took certain action. So some of the choices are based also on demonstrate due diligence. But which due diligence do you demonstrate more with a vendor than an open source project if you define controls in place? That is food for thought for today. As you saw, I've been really active with the course, releasing a lesson, but I want to keep all this conversation on because I want this channel to be a place where you could think about topics that no, the industry is not discussing enough. So one day it could happen that your CFO is cutting your bills. Think if a choice that are coming with a cost saving is not actually going to impact your security posture. If you have done the pre-workout, you could have a good answer in advance for that day. Take care. Thanks for the chat. Bye bye.